You're getting better at it every day. Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, February 2nd, 3rd, thank you, third day. Today is Tuesday, February 3rd. This is the Government, Labor, and Elections Committee, and we are joined by, for a briefing today by MML and MACO. I believe we'll begin with MML, that's correct, so have you all come to the table. And I also want to apologize for being a little late in starting. We had a press conference with the speaker this afternoon, so I apologize, but thank everyone for your patience. And with that, the floor is yours. Good to see you all.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Teresa Kuhns. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Maryland Municipal League. It's nice to see all of you and be in this room for my first briefing, no longer a Baltimore City room, so I appreciate it.
If you all could just pull the mic as close to you as possible.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you speaking into it.
Sorry,
but it feels
short
like you're
problems.
echoing.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
So what is the Maryland Municipal League? The Maryland Municipal League is 161 local governments here in Maryland. We range from villages to cities and towns across the state and special taxing districts. We have about rural, urban, suburban. We represent all of it. We have coastal, mountains, inside the Beltway, outside the Beltway. We represent 4 forms of local government, and 161 different unique charters serve as our governing documents. There is a municipal election in every month of every year. We see a 30% elected turnover each year. Our elected membership is consistently changing, which is an opportunity for education for us as well. Municipal governments represent a collective of 32,000 direct employees, resulting in $2.5 billion in wages. Add in our supported roles connected to municipal operation, that increases to a 42,000 person municipal workforce in the state of Maryland. Municipalities are responsible for $5.2 billion in economic statewide activity. Our members send the state 34% of its total sales tax revenue. That's about $2.3 billion. And our residents make up $3.2 billion in state revenue income tax. 25% of the state's total population resides in municipalities, yet we exist on less than 5% of the land use, making us the most densely populated of the areas of the state. Municipalities are growing at 4 times faster than the unincorporated regions of the state, and property values on average are 13% higher in our municipalities compared to the other parts of the state. 7 of the top 10 places to visit in Maryland are within a municipality or border it. So let's talk about what our municipalities do for the residents of Maryland. 140 run trash removal services, 93 operate water treatment facilities. We have 88 local law enforcement agencies, which is the highest annual budget item reported by our members, costing an average of $5.4 million with an average 12,000 calls a year we respond to for the state of Maryland. We have 78 wastewater treatment plants. And the wastewater and water operations, average municipality is about $3.2 to $4.3 million a year. So for some of your smaller cities, it's a pretty large expense. For this session, we've had over 20 submissions for legislative priority, and 17 of those are revenue related. So just like you, we see a revenue issue. We are all in the same place. Our cities are feeling it, our residents are feeling it. So what did we do? We decided to put together a revenue modernization task force bill, which is being chaired or sponsored this year by Chair of Ways and Means, Janelle Wilkins. The only municipal revenue authority currently for municipalities is property tax. We do get a piggyback of income tax. For every $1.35, a dollar goes to the state, 25 cents goes to the county, and we have 5 cents coming back to that municipality where the resident is from. The income tax was added after the last municipal revenue study by the state, which was done in 1962. It has been six decades before we've studied the revenue authority issue for Maryland's municipalities. So our pitch for our approximately 45,000 members was to let us propose a study. This study is to look at all local government revenues, both between the counties and the municipalities. In the last 6 decades, we have been given more responsibilities, essential day-to-day and life-impacting duties, but we have not been given the resources. This year, our board, led by President Todd Knock of Pocomoke City, approved a sole priority. We are very excited to talk to you about that today, but I want to share that we are also looking at affordability. We want to review the data and bring those real solutions back next year to all of you. Our members punch above their weight. We are economic engines of the state, and we are part of the solution for Maryland going forward. Additionally, every year, our legislative committee, which is represented by regional folks from each district, so every voice is represented. It is chaired by Baltimore City Councilman Mark Conway, vice chairs Judd Ashman, Mayor of Gaithersburg, and Abby McNinch, Mayor of Denton. We have so far reviewed about 120 bills, with another large batch ready to go tomorrow, so thank all of you for dropping your bills. Our advocacy team brings those positions to you that our members make. So our advocacy team is led by Bill George, who's here with me today, our managing director. And I'd like to ask him and the rest of our staff to review their portfolio, explain some of the top bills that we're seeing and the impacts on municipalities.
Great. Thank you, Teresa, and good afternoon, everyone. Bill George, the Managing Director at MML. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about personnel as that pertains to your committee, coming from the perspective of Maryland's municipal governments as the employers of 32,000 direct employees. So many of the requirements that are placed on private sector employers are also placed on public sector employers as well. That's some of the state requirements, such as sick and safe leave, the impending rollout of the family and medical leave insurance, minimum wage, unemployment insurance, and also federal requirements to OSHA, the Family Medical Leave Act, as well as the ADA. But there are several key aspects where public sector employers just fundamentally differ from private sector employees or employers. The first is that municipal elected officials and their staff are paid for with taxpayer dollars. That's important to keep in mind as we consider legislation before this committee. The other is that public sector employers are called public sector employers because not only do they serve the public, but they interact regularly with the public in public spaces. This is fundamentally different than a private business operating within the confines of their own property. We're talking not just those that we see out on the public roadways, such as trash collectors or police officers or code enforcement employees, but also those that work in, say, City Hall, for instance. It's a public building, it's open to the public, and oftentimes those staff people interact with members of the public in unpredictable scenarios. So this brings just an increased level of a potential liability to public sector employers just due to the unscripted nature sometimes in the environments in which they work and the people with whom they interact. And lastly is that some municipal governments participate in the state retirement and pension system. It's some, not all. It varies from year to year. Sometimes it's usually between 30 and 80, so it varies kind of drastically. Some municipalities have subsets of their city government within it. Maybe it's just their law enforcement division or something like that. So my ask for you when considering personnel matters is just to consider the fundamental difference between public and private sector employers. Sometimes the intent may be for private sector employers to conform in a certain manner that may not be appropriate for those in the public sector. And I just ask that as you consider those bills, to please keep that in mind. That wraps up my portion on personnel. I'm happy to answer any questions, but otherwise, Justin has quite a bit to talk to you about.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, committee members for having us today. My portfolio generally is going to keep me in Ways and Means and Budget and Tax, but I'll also be here with you regarding a lot of government operations type issues. And I'd say the overarching thought that I want to talk to you about, something you've probably heard from us in MACO before, is that one size doesn't fit all. And I'm going to explain kind of how that goes through our operations and various issues that'll be in your subcommittees. So let's start with the Public Information Act. Right now, our clerks are often the custodian of record, and for 58% of Maryland municipalities, so about 90 of our members, they serve fewer than 2,500 residents, so they have very limited administrative staff. It's not uncommon for a small town clerk to be in a part-time position. They wear 5 hats. They do a whole lot to kind of keep the community running, to keep the council's projects moving forward. It is quite common, however, to have staff attorneys, but also outside counsel help fill the needs of complex or large requests, especially those that include redaction. We see this with video a lot. Anytime you get a large request, Maryland requires that we go through with it. But I will say mandatory denials are easier for our folks than discretionary denials. Discretionary denials ultimately leave custodians up to lawsuits on two fronts, because it's whether they should have allowed a document to go public or whether they should have kept it from being shared. So they're often put in a very tough position on discretionary denials. And then I will say in recent years, we've given the Public Information Act, not accountability board, compliance board, sorry, the ability to help municipalities deal with bad faith and frivolous requests. And so far that has proven really helpful. So that's something we appreciate. MML regularly offers Public Information Act courses to our memberships at fall conference or summer conference, which is something we try to do to make sure, I think as Teresa mentioned, we do see a large turnover in our elected officials. We want to make sure they're up to speed. So that's one of the services that we provide to try to help keep our members in compliance. We're not seeking any changes to the process right now, just trying to help the committee understand our challenges at the small town size. When it comes to Open Meetings Act, you're going to kind of see some overlap. Like with kind of our elections, the Open Meetings Act, where we interact with it, is often a tough balancing act that revolves around ensuring good government practices and then also making life easy for local government volunteers who are in high need. So we would just ask, when you're looking at the Open Meetings Act, please make sure to consider staff sizing, things like digital infrastructure, because ultimately we have to try to manage that in a cost-effective way for the taxpayers in these small towns. And again, MML regularly does Open Meetings Act workshops at our conferences. We'll also sometimes go out to jurisdictions that saw a lot of turnover and hold an individual training just to make sure they know the rules of the road and they don't end up in non-compliance. Looking toward ethics, I'll say MML supports high ethical standards, and Maryland's law requires local ethic ordinances to be equivalent or more stringent than state law, but there is some variety. And the State Ethics Commission ultimately produces model ordinances and approves local ethics laws. So you might hear us talk about those from time to time in here. We do require a little more flexibility from the state requirements, again, kind of due to these small volunteer pools. If we have too strict conflict of interest rules that are designed kind of for state agencies or state bodies, that can unintentionally disqualify the only person in town that makes sense for these positions. So we do require some flexibility around the edges there. These local ethics requirements are often tailored to ensure a quorum can still function while maintaining integrity, and we advocate for ethics standards that recognize the civil servant nature of municipal government. All right, on to public notices. This is another core facet of government transparency. This is us basically notifying the public of the important, impactful public business we do on a regular basis. And in many cases, the state law requires that we publish notices of this kind in the newspaper of general circulation. Now, for a lot of places, that's a print publication that might only be the Washington Post if you're in the Montgomery, Prince George's region. And those public notices can range anywhere from $100 a notice to $500 a notice. So we see these small papers being pushed out and exorbitant fees to publish these notices come through. One good example of this are charter amendments. If a municipality is amending their charter, state law requires them to publish 4 public notices. That's in the Washington Post. That's $2,000 just to change your charter on the public notice front. And the only way people are going to read it, I guess, is if they also have a subscription to the Washington Post. So we have some challenges there that we're going to be talking about with you all over the next few years, I'm sure. But a lot of towns really rely on their social media and their website to actually connect with members of the community. I swear I'm almost done, but I have 2 more important issues that are going to come through your committee, a couple of them this year. The first is on the issue of annexation. So annexation is a tool by which governments can grow their boundaries, often extending water and sewer to promote development and provide residents with closest to the people services, many of which Teresa mentioned: police, trash collection, water and sewer, code enforcement. Now, the prerequisites for an annexation are really important. These are areas that have to be defined in their comprehensive plan as a municipal growth area. The land must be contiguous and adjoin the municipality, and we can't create enclaves kind of within our borders. Annexation is initiated by petition from either the property owners and voters or the municipality itself with consent. And annexations can be challenged by a petition for a public referendum, either by the county or the residents in the area, by businesses. So it is very much a public democratic process to annex. This year, I think in just a couple of days, you're going to hear legislation on some of the challenges that municipalities have run into in the annexation process that has blocked development here in Maryland, but I will leave that discussion for Thursday. Kind of also in the battle between boundaries, we have the discussion of incorporation, which will go to the local government subcommittee. And incorporation is what allows for the formation of a new municipality with the potential to transform their community, also via petition. Unfortunately, we have not seen any new municipalities incorporate since 1954. This is with the exception of 5 state-created special taxing districts in Montgomery County. They were allowed to convert, but other than that, we haven't seen a new community go through the petition process and establish themselves as municipalities since 1954. That is something we hope to talk to you about again this year as well. There are communities out there like the community of Edgewood in Harford County that aren't seeing the investment they'd hope to see and want to be able to have their own voice, whether that's in economic development, land use, or otherwise. They think they can do a better job providing for their residents, and they're going to try to push for an avenue to do that. That is all I have in my vast portfolio for you.
Thank you so much for the overview. Wanted to see if there were any questions from the committee. Oh, Delegate Thomason, I can never see it past your laptop, but Delegate Thomason, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'm good. Thanks. I'm glad the very last thing you just said there, because I was pulling up the article. I remember reading about how there hasn't been a new municipality since 1954, which is conveniently enough when they changed how you became a municipality. Imagine that. And it was mostly surrounding the Harford County situation. It looks like, I guess Delegate Steve Johnson's got a bill. I'm sure since 1954, but have bills like this come, have bills like that been introduced every year, or does it come up every once in a while?
Sure. So we've seen a version of this bill from Delegate Johnson for the past few years.
Okay.
I can say in my tenure in MML, and I think I speak for Bill as well, the last decade or so, we really haven't seen anything on this front. My understanding is the General Assembly has tried to nibble around the edges of this over the 70-year history, but ultimately, as long as that county veto power is there, it's likely to be used.
And just to give you a little bit of history, we have 24 communities in the last 3 years that have called us and asked us to become incorporated. And they have petitions, they have signatures. Some examples, other than Edgewood, which we did go to Edgewood and do a town hall with their citizens there and speak to them about the benefits of municipalities. Odenton, Fort Washington, Waldorf, Lexington Park. We are getting calls from across the state who would like to become their own communities. And we understand the reasoning. None of us were alive in 1954 when this changed, but we do think there's another option that takes both the county and municipal choice out, and there's another way to do it without us being the deciders.
Yeah, we, in my district, we've got Eldersburg, which is an unincorporated community, and if they were to become incorporated, they would be larger than the city of Westminster, which is our largest city. And Eldersburg has, I don't want to get entirely into it, but they're our largest growth area that's not a municipality, and it's grown at a very rapid pace, and we're trying to maybe look at that in a different way and say, hey, I mean, we're not necessarily against any growth, but just not in one very specific area. And it always comes back to, well, if they probably were their own municipality and had a lot more local control, that probably the growth wouldn't have happened at that speed. I don't know. But I am interested in Delegate Johnson's legislation and that. And can I ask one more question?
Is it quick?
Yeah.
All right.
You mentioned the in Montgomery County, there's 5, what did you call it?
Special taxing districts.
Yeah, how do those work?
So they were created by the state, and essentially it cordons off income tax revenue from those areas to go back to those areas. So that's it. There's a little bit of a hurdle there in terms of income tax and how it gets to a newly incorporated space. Well, in those 5 areas, they didn't really have that hurdle because the county was already sending the income tax to those areas.
Thank you. Wanted to correct the record. I think there was one person here that was around in 1954. I will not call out their name.
I meant this panel, Madam Chair. I
Well,
apologize.
I would say of the elected officials around the horseshoe. And I also just want to take a moment to acknowledge our former majority whip, former delegate Jazz Lewis, that has joined us. So good to see you, fellow friend. Okay, next we will move to Delegate Terraza.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the presentation. And before I ask my question, you mentioned a whole bunch of really interesting statistics that I didn't necessarily see in here. Could you guys send them to us? Because I thought it was really interesting who was doing, like, law enforcement, who was doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was
We've
really
done 3
interesting.
independent studies the last 3 years, and we'll send that research over.
Okay, that'd be great. And also, if you could pull the mic closer to you when you talk, it's just a little hard to. Maybe it's me. But one of you said, I can't remember who, said about good government and making things, like balancing good government versus in terms of the Open Meetings Act and making things easier and not, I guess, super expensive is sort of the idea. Where do you see those two things conflicting in terms of making it easier for, and it may be, I'm really just asking the question, like how, in what way do those conflict?
Yeah, so this is a great question. It was a few years ago now, there was a debate over whether some member of the public body needed to be trained in the Open Meetings Act, or whether or not it was sufficient that a staff member for that body was trained in the Open Meetings Act to make sure that that group would meet in compliance.
Okay.
A lot of that discussion at the time was based around how many requirements we need to make of people who are volunteering their time in public office to take some of these trainings every year or each time. So it's little stuff like that. It's not
Yeah,
really.
it's not necessarily the Open Meetings Act per se, but the requirements of the training that it's
Yeah,
related to.
it's usually going to be kind of around the fringes, but just taking into consideration the civil nature of how hard it can actually be in these small towns to get people to volunteer to run for office and serve their community. We try to make sure they have the means. I think another thing we've looked at in Open Meetings Act is like live streaming requirements over time and the cost that can have to jurisdictions that are trying to implement it if they don't have the technology or the sophistication.
Okay. And then just a last information request. I worked with you on an election bill a while ago, and you provided me with this great list of, because I don't have any municipalities in Howard County, but you gave me this great list of all the municipalities and sort of the sizes, I think it was. If you could provide me that, and I'm sure other people would be interested in that on this committee as well.
By population. We can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Terraza. Delegate Chisholm.
Madam Chair, thank you for the presentation. When you started talking about annexes, it piqued my interest about an article I wrote earlier last year in regards to municipalities owning their own utilities and producing their own power. There's over 2,000 throughout the country that actually own. It could be just the wires, or they could be producing their own solar, whatever the case may be, natural gas. Do we know if there's any municipalities in the state of Maryland that currently do that? And if not, do you know what's holding them back?
Sure. So in terms of electrical power plants, I can speak to, there are 6. I can rattle off a few off the top of my head. It's Thurmont, it is Berlin, Hagerstown, Easton, thank you. And then there's, I believe, 2 more.
And they, with that, is it profitable to the municipality?
I can't speak to that. I don't know about their operating, the budget specifically.
I only ask because there was the guy that sent me all the detail. It showed me how, like, Anne Arundel County could actually turn their landfills into some power plants and actually make it profitable rather than being such a negative and kind of controlling your own utility. So it was more of a curiosity question. I knew we had a couple, but I didn't know exactly where they were operating. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Delegate Sample Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for being here today. I'm very much appreciative of the direction that you gave us. Well, the path that you're going on a specific subject. What I'm referencing is the study that you're going to do with regard to the tax differential, basically, as we come down to it. So I just got a question as it stands right now. Prior to coming into session, I had many municipalities say this is a huge issue. They want something done immediately and saying this is a task for us as legislators. I responded with, where's the study for this a few municipalities? Is that still a fair question or statement to say to them, or will this study that you're referencing take place or be enough for that particular or many municipalities to move forward with what they're seeking to get, clarity and data that they have a concern?
I hope that it will cover that. So we envision in our world, we've made it vague enough that tax differential would fall underneath that. I know that David Foster, former mayor of Chestertown, has done a study for our Eastern Shore chapter, and that started that discussion, which I'm assuming you're hearing from the ESAM members, I believe, in your district.
Yes, you're correct. Ocean City was very vocal and made it
Mayor
known that
Bean's
they
very
conducted their study, but Cambridge is not in that same category of completing a study. So I don't have to say to them, go do your thing because MML is doing it?
If the legislature passes the bill, our priority, which we do hope you are able to do.
Okay, thank you on that. And then my last clarifying question is, so when I came into, I guess, the government space, probably day after graduating from college, the municipality, Pocomoke City, was the one that I was able to enter into and served underneath the city manager at the time. And program Open Space was one of our biggies. I felt like it was almost one of my babies because I knew a lot of projects were conceived underneath program Open Space. With that being said, there has been, and I haven't seen the official documents on it, but there may be potential cuts to program Open Space and dealing with the infrastructure and things of that nature. So that's a concern to me. And when I heard about it, I was like, oh, no, please. Just because I've seen the growth for so many years and the benefit to the communities that we serve. So if you could just speak on that, is that something that you're pushing back on, or what's the process on your end for by way of this potential cut?
Yes, thank you, Delegate. And, program Open Space is a critical component for a lot of municipalities. For those who aren't familiar with it, generally that revenue is shared with counties, and then counties kind of work with their municipalities in most cases to funnel that down to local projects at that level. Program Open Space via budget actions has been, I think, $25 million between now and FY29 are being diverted to the general fund. So we are seeing a cut to that program over a handful of years. I think there's a bill in this year by Senator Jennings and Delegate Mike Griffith to restore that funding We have not taken a position on that yet, but I think we will do that tomorrow. Obviously, this is a program we've long supported and probably will continue to try to do so at full funding.
Okay, thank you so much, and I didn't know who had which bills or whatever. I just knew that I was a little heartbroken by that potentially being on the table.
I can get
but
that to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Crutchfield.
Madam Chair. So, and thank you for being here. So, I'm from Montgomery County. I represent District 19. We only have a very, very small piece of municipality in our district. So I am really clueless as far as, how municipalities are actually incorporated, and just wanted to find out really just what are the basics? What are the basic requirements for a community to even be considered to be incorporated as a municipality?
Yep, so the incorporation process starts at the petition level. Residents have to determine that they see this for their community. They start a petition, it gets 25% of the signatures from the eligible voters, and then they form an organizing committee. And it's really the job of that organizing committee alongside a county liaison to spell out what services they want to provide, what tax rate they would need to have to be able to provide those services, whether or not this makes sense to move forward, and then they would craft a charter together. And it's ultimately that charter that the county right now has the ability to approve or not approve, but then that would go back to another public vote. So if the county did approve the charter, which they never have, then in theory, a public vote takes place by all the members in that area, and then they could become established under that charter that was crafted together.
Okay. Thank you so much for that very basic understanding. Appreciate it.
That's why they're here. Delegate Fisher. Yes, Delegate Fisher.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good to see you. So I've always been curious about you mentioned towns, incorporated towns, their primary source or only source of revenue is property taxes?
Yep.
Go ahead.
So that's their only meaningful tool or lever when it comes to taxation. We'll say it's about 50% of the general fund budget on average is property taxes. Then you have income tax, obviously, but what's important to note about income tax, county sets the local income tax rate, and then they pass through 17% of the income that's derived from residents in the municipality. So we receive a very small portion of income tax on the side of it. Our other kind of, I'd say, big pieces of the pie, which are really only 7%, you're looking at federal grants, state grants, and when we're saying state grants, we're talking about program open space, highway user revenue, those. But predominantly, property tax is all we really have to lever. And so whenever we're forced to, let's say, subsidize highway user revenues, when those were cut for many years, we have to do that through property taxes, and property taxes end up being asked to pay for way too much.
So the town roads, for example, if there's a gas station that's in the town, for example, in Calvert County, North Beach, Chesapeake Beach, they each have a single gas station in the town. The revenue from the gas tax does not stay local.
So the revenue from the gas tax, in part, but not wholly, goes to the gasoline motor vehicle revenue account, which funds highway user revenues. So,
thus my point, that ultimately comes to Annapolis and does not stay local. None of it stays local, and it's redistributed however they want to do it, depending on how much they overspent the year before.
And largely doesn't cover our full highway user revenue eligible project costs, yes.
And then do any other towns other than the town of Chesapeake Beach that have these pull tab bingo machines?
I believe
In townships?
I believe Perryville is the only other location in the state,
Oh, okay.
where
Yeah.
Great Wolf Lodge just placed
Well, and where I'm going with this is, because it is helpful. It's in Chesapeake Beach, before Maryland had gaming, Southern Maryland was Las Vegas in the 50s. A lot of people don't know that. And so Chesapeake Beach, through Rod and Reel, had a lawsuit that they put in place, and they won in the state's highest court to be able to keep gaming before the state legalized it based on what had been there many years before. Anyway, long story short, those facilities brought in, the several that are there brought in over $100 million. This is back in 2011. And none of that tax stayed local, except for, I think, $500,000. So,
And I believe that's the same agreement they have today, from what I
and
understand.
that's still the same, yeah. So, and which is my point here, is that it seems like the towns are not able to properly function because no matter what they do, no matter how good they are at economic development, no matter how good they are at management, there's no money that ever stays local. It's always usurped by the state.
We are one of 4 states that did not share the sales tax back with the locals.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know there'll be some bills this year, not in our committee, with regard to the share of the sales tax. I wanted to go back, because I think the delegate brought up a good point. I know we fall on different sides of highway user revenue, but I think we all collectively agree that our infrastructure, roads, bridges, and transit all does need investment. I wanted to see if you could speak a little bit more to MML, to your partners in your, I guess the folks that are members of MML and their advocacy work around transportation in their respective areas, and what that looks like, broadly speaking, when we utilize transportation. So I'm curious if you could share some of that with this committee. I know that's not our jurisdiction, but it is a part of governance, though.
Absolutely, yeah. So when it comes to advocacy for transportation-related projects, so obviously highway user revenue comes back in some form or fashion to the local governments to spend on HUR-eligible projects, which are articulated in the statute. In terms of regionality, that, from my understanding and talking with our members, mostly happens through the Consolidated Transportation Program through MDOT. That is their 6-year rolling large-scale project transportation program that includes all sorts of different types of projects. There is a local priority letter process by which municipalities and counties can submit priority projects to MDOT for consideration to be included in the CTP. There's also the local roadshow where every year MDOT and their representatives come to every county and present the CTP and talk about the local initiatives. In talking with MDOT, it seems to be that the more powerful way in which local governments can work together is on consolidated priority letters. When municipalities work with their counties and vice versa on jointly recommended projects to be included in the CTP. Now, that being said, the CTP rarely includes municipal projects per se because they are generally not large scale enough or reach the dollar threshold to be included in the CTP. However, that does not mean that there's no projects in the CTP that don't impact municipalities, particularly the movement of people and freight throughout the region. They may just not be on municipal roads, but they certainly do impact the region's transportation viability.
Thank you. Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nice to see you all. Justin, question for you, because I know we still have PTSD from 2023 when we worked on the charter amendment bill that took 2 years to get through, creating the new process for particularly smaller municipalities. Can you talk at all about how that has been working, other than the 9 municipalities that are all very tiny that I represent? Are there any other municipalities in the state that, as you know of, have been able to take advantage of it or utilized it?
Thank you for the question. I have not heard from many other municipalities in the state, but essentially what the delegate's talking about is we crafted a solution that hopefully should work for some of our smaller members, which diverts some of the required postings. I mentioned for charter amendments, you have to post in a newspaper 4 times. This altered that to also allow some of those postings to be covered by either handing out at every address or hand mailing a public notice to every resident, that would cover the public notice requirements of putting it in a newspaper. So if you found it more effective and more cost efficient to be able to deliver a notice specifically to every person, that we found that as at least a working solution in comparison to 4 times in the Washington Post.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Okay, that ends our questions for this panel. I want to thank you all for coming to present before us today and just to share a little overview of some of the core priorities and I think framing from the perspective of your members. So thank you so much. I'm sure we will see you, or one of you at least, several times this session. So thank you, and I look forward to continuing the
Madam
work.
Chair.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you both. Thank you all, excuse me. We will now move on to our next briefing from the Maryland Association of Counties. I believe we are joined by Mr. Canali, and we have Ms. Carrington Anderson and MC Keegan Ayer. Is that correct? Great. Welcome. Welcome to GLE. Thank you. We'll give Rory a second to get, okay, it looks like the present, all right. There is our presentation. Great, perfect. The floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
So good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for this invitation today. I am MC Keegan Ayer. I am a council member from Frederick County, and I am this year's president of the Maryland Association of Counties, MACO. MACO appreciates your time and really values these briefings and the chance to talk through county priorities early on in the session. MACO represents all 23 counties and the city of Baltimore, large, small, urban, suburban, and rural. Our members look very different depending on which county they represent. However, they all share core responsibilities: schools, public safety, roads, elections, public health, basic services that our residents, our constituents rely on each and every day. Many of you know MACO through our summer and winter conference, which bring together county leaders, legislators, state officials in either Cambridge or Ocean City for policy discussions and hopefully some good conversations and problem solving. But day to day, MACO also serves as a resource, helping connect legislators with county officials with data, practical on-the-ground perspective, and how state policies play out and impact the counties. Another important point to emphasize is how MACO sets our policy decisions, our positions. MACO positions come directly from the counties themselves. County elected officials from across the state serve on MACO's legislative committee, and that group determines where MACO takes positions on legislation and budget proposals. That process works because members set aside our party loyalties, our party labels, and we focus on the impact to our counties. I have sat on that committee for 12 years now. As a result, MACO's positions are often unanimous or very close to it. We work very hard, as some of you may know, to reach consensus on most of the issues that come before that committee. The goal isn't about politics. It's on identifying what counties effectively need to keep the systems working for our residents, for our shared constituents. The process works because the members set aside their labels, their parties, and they focus on county government impacts, which is why MACO positions often are unanimous. Counties are also eager and committed to being partners with the state. I had a meeting with the governor before I was sworn in as president, and the one commitment that I made to him was, we want to be your partner. We want to work together to solve the problems of the state. The issues that we are raising today aren't about shifting responsibility. They are about keeping the state and local partnerships balanced. The partnerships matter even more now than they did before. Counties are operating in a period of real uncertainty, just like the state. Federal funding instability, inflationary pressures, workforce challenges, rising service demands affect all local governments. That makes predictability and stability at the state level essential for our counties trying to plan responsibly and avoid disruptions to our core services. MACO's initiatives this session focus on stability, flexibility, and protecting core county responsibilities. They are practical. They are about avoiding funding cliffs, preventing shift costs, and keeping the existing systems working. As president of MACO, I have no specific portfolio. I brought my portfolio people with me. Hopefully, they will speak to your questions about specifics, and I will try and answer your questions where I can. And at this point, I shall turn it over to Kevin to walk through highway user revenues, and then Carrington to talk about budget, security, school construction, and we will just go from there. So Kevin, take it away.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Madam Chair and members, for having us today. My name is Kevin Canali. I'm the Legislative Director for the Maryland Association of Counties, or MACO. I know that MML talked a lot about highway user revenue. They stole our thunder a little bit. I won't go into all the details and repeat a lot of what they said. The bottom line is that local governments maintain over 80% of the roadways in Maryland. Back during the Great Recession, the state stole our money. It was supposed to be temporary, but it never came back. So all of the other recession-era cuts were restored. Highway user is the one we're having the most trouble getting back. Over the years, we've made incremental gains, but we're nowhere near where we need to be and where we used to be. When they made those cuts in Baltimore City, just for an example, they lost $94 million overnight. And so over the years, we've lost billions of dollars to our local roadways, and that's a problem, and we want to get that fixed. So this year, there is a bill not to increase our percentages, not to create some new program, not to increase the amount of money, but just to hold counties, municipalities, and Baltimore City harmless, because unless we get a bill, we face a $100 million funding cliff in fiscal *28. So overnight, $100 million, it takes us a step backward. We're looking to go forward and not backward. And I heard some conversation about gas tax. Our residents think that when they go to the gas station and they fill up their tank, that money is going toward maintaining the local roads. But that's not true, and that hasn't been true for a long time. The reality is property taxes pay for the local roads. It's not the deal that your residents think they're getting, but it is the reality in local government. So again, House Bill 559, you'll see that bill in the House. That bill just will hold everyone harmless and prevent that clip for counties, Baltimore City, and for municipalities. So again, we want to avoid taking the step back. We want to move forward. We understand the fiscal situation. We're not going to ask for a full restoration, but we're saying, please get us to the next big thing. We think there are going to be broad conversations about transportation after the next election and what the state wants to do. So our ask is, please don't hit us with $100 million and let's get it to the next thing. I will speak briefly on housing too. This is another initiative for MACO. We talked about partnership. We know that housing is a big deal. We know that we are central players in the housing debate. And we have worked over the interim a lot with the second floor and with legislators on a lot of housing issues generally. I think to frame this, we want more housing. Everybody wants more housing. We want economic development. We all need it. But we think it makes sense to put housing in areas where you have the infrastructure to support it. For instance, on Kent Island in Queen Anne's County, the Maryland Department of Environment tells them they don't have any more capacity for sewer, but in some of the legislation we've seen, they would have to create density on Kent Island. And so we just have misaligned goals from the state. And so we're working again in partnership. We're in a positive way. I think we're close on a lot of these issues when it comes to housing and growth and things like vesting, which is this term, and the developers like to talk about that. But even with the developers, we've had great conversations, and I think we're close. So our ask would be, please let's be smart about this. Let's not try and put density in areas that cannot support it. We need to build schools. Carrington will talk about that. Our roads, we've talked about wastewater treatment, all of these infrastructure issues. We are concerned that we have aging infrastructure and that more density in areas that can't support it will only lead to more deferred maintenance and issues down the line. So we're pro-housing. We want to see more housing. We want to see more affordable housing. We just ask that we're smart about it, and we're certainly at the table having these conversations, and we want to be partners on the issue. I'll turn it to Carrington to talk about a few more things, and then we can move on to elections and employment issues.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Carrington Anderson with the Maryland Association of Counties, and I'm grateful to be here today. So I'm going to touch on two other of MACO's initiatives, that's school construction and county budget security, which both are fairly straightforward, but I'll start with school construction. So counties are partners in both building and maintaining school buildings. The state participation here is important, but timing and predictability matter just as much as the top line numbers here. The cost of both building and maintaining safe and modern schools has risen sharply as materials and labor and inflation continues to drive up the cost of projects. It hasn't just been difficult to keep up with that inflation, but it's also the state of the inventory is now poor because funds haven't kept up. And on top of that, there's blueprint mandates that require their own renovations and additions, and this has kind of created the perfect storm that's creating this urgency. So counties, our ask is for clear alignment between approvals, funding, and real construction costs. When the alignment breaks down, projects get delayed, and local budgets are the ones that absorb that risk. So if there's more state funding to supplement local needs and local funds, that helps those projects move along faster. And also, just kind of closing for that one, $300 million isn't quite what it used to be. And again, our ask is just to take a look at that plan and reevaluate. The next one I'm going to touch on is county budget security. So counties are continually absorbing cost and growing cost exposure with limited flexibility. So if we look at last session with the governor's budget and then the budget that's been proposed for fiscal year 2027, combining those two, counties are looking at about $200 million in cost shifts. That's in new and continued obligations that are tied to state budget balancing. Those shifts happen when counties are going through uncertainty, just as the state is. We are dealing with inflation, workforce challenges, and service demands, just as the state is. So predictability matters. I think we're going to talk about predictability a lot today, especially for multi-year planning and capital commitments. Unfunded mandates and cost shifts put pressure on service deliveries that our residents care deeply about. And I think Kevin wants to add something to the county budget.
Just a few things on that note. I'll talk about the governor's budget, particularly the BRFA. That's where most of the issues that we raise are going to lie. There are a few things that stand out to us. The Disparity Grant Program, which is a program that supports low wealth jurisdictions, but with good tax effort. So if you have a tax rate the state feels like is adequate, but you can't raise the revenue that you need, the state has a program to help in those areas. These are poor counties who need the money. The BRFA proposes to flat fund that program for 3 years. That's, I think, $21 million just in fiscal 27, and then, of course, similar amounts in the out years. That's not helpful for our disparity grant counties, for the counties who have stepped up, increased their tax rates, and expected to get aid from the state. That is now being cut. So that's very concerning for us, especially for, again, poor counties. We see teacher, library, and the community college retirement costs proposed to be shifted to county governments. In this BRFA, we absorbed a pretty significant shift last year. This year, they want to shift half of the increase in the state's liability that's bumping up. That amounts to about $40 million. 911 funds. This is a new one. We've been at the table on these issues and trying to advance next generation 911. It's extremely important issue. The BRFA proposes to allow those funds to support MDEM, the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. And while they certainly need funding, and our local emergency managers work with them daily, we don't think that the 911 Trust Fund is the appropriate avenue to make sure that they get funding. That should be sacred. People are very much into the idea. They will pay a fee if you tell them that it goes to make sure that a fire truck or an ambulance will show up. They're on board for that. But when you start taking that money and putting it into other places, we're concerned about that. Assisted outpatient treatment, obviously that's a big issue too. In the BRFA, it just says that counties have to do it. And if you don't do it, the state will do it and you will pay for it. That's a new one. We think that probably should have been a bill, but alas, it's in the BRFA. We'll have stuff to say about that. It's a great idea. We're not saying that we don't like the policy, but it is a pretty significant unfunded mandate that shows up in the BRFA. So just wanted to highlight a few things in the BRFA that you will hear. I know not in this committee, but you will hear the debate, and that's exactly what we're talking about. Just those issues stand out to us as being sort of top tier.
So we're going to come back to elections. I'm going to go to employee benefits and relations. That's one of the areas I cover at MACO. And this is there are going to be a lot of bills before your committee that touch on this area, whether it's human resources, labor, personnel, or health benefits. As you know, counties are major employers. We're a public employer, just like the state is a public employer, and we're delivering services that our residents rely on every day. The county workforce varies across every county in size or exactly what departments they have, but a lot of times that's public safety, public health, that's correctional staff, that is people who drive snow plow officials, engineers, and more. So I think some of the things that counties do really well is they offer their employees really great benefits. We also work to have competitive wages, but in particular, those benefits are really good and have a strong commitment to our county employees because they are delivering those services that residents rely on, and they are public servants, and we owe them a lot. So wanted to touch on, and I know MML touched on this a bit too, but how local governments are different from the private sector. We're unique from them, even though a lot of these bills that you will see are on employers. So if a business faces a new cost, they have the option to raise the price of that product. Obviously, that is not the same for a county. We operate within fixed budgets, and we set those through public processes. If there's a new mandate that comes from the state, if that's an unfunded mandate, counties can't just pass that cost along. The options for a county there is either cutting a critical service that our residents depend on, or the other option is taxes, which, as we all know, is not incredibly popular. And also, on top of that, 2/3 of Marylanders live in a county where they have reached the maximum income tax rate. So really, there's not a lot of flexibility there, and hands are quite tied. So just a couple other things to touch on within employee benefits. So county policies, county employers, they operate in the open. We're subject to public meetings, budget hearings, audits, elections. If a resident doesn't like what their county is doing or how they're operating, they could show up for a council meeting. I think that's something that we would want to encourage you all as well. If Frederick County doesn't like, a delegate doesn't like what Frederick County is doing, we invite you to come to that council. You talk to Council Member Keegan-Air, and you can address those issues. Sometimes even before a bill is filed. We are willing to work stuff out before a bill as well. But again, different from the private sector, if you have an issue with Dunkin' Donuts, good luck to you. You can't go to them, but just want to say that we really do want to encourage you all there. And any bills that you guys see on labor standards or retirement or public health benefits, they do create long-term obligations for us that we have to plan for and pay for decades. Again, that's why that predictability matters. And then just last thing I want to emphasize here for you all, we have talked about how counties are not one size fits all, something that we should get tattooed on us because we say it so much to you all. But a rural county and an urban county, they might have a different priority or they might have a different workforce issue. So we're best suited to tailor those solutions locally to figure out how that works best. So just want to emphasize the flexibility, predictability, and the fiscal capacity. That's how we sustain those strong benefits. I'm going to give it back to Kevin on elections.
Okay, and just a few notes on elections. This is in my portfolio as well. So counties run our elections across the state through our local boards of elections. Local boards obviously handle staffing, facilities, equipment, early voting, election day operations, security. Recruitment and retention is a big problem right now, and I think a lot of the political climate drives that. So I think you'll also see bills about trying to add some protections and some assurances to our election workers and to all the poll workers who come and maintain our polling places and do that great work. We're very interested in making sure that they feel safe. Again, we already have enough problems trying to recruit and retain people. We've increased pay. AMACO was supportive of that bill, even though it did cost money, but we understand the importance of ensuring free and fair elections. So we certainly are going to be interested in those bills and making sure our people are safe and have the tools that they need to do their jobs on election day. Typically, the bills that AMACO weighs in on when it comes to elections are bills that are going to cost our local boards money or cause them administrative complications. So you won't see AMACO in here on a lot of the policy bills because, again, our role in supporting our local boards is really when they need help with funding or if something is going to cause major problems for them and challenges, they'll come to us and ask for help. But we won't be in on some of the bills that deal with just policy stuff. So again, we focus on operational impacts, funding responsibilities. We do obviously support free and fair elections, and we've worked really hard to make sure even during the pandemic that voters were educated, that voters understood what was going on, and that they were able to cast their ballots in the way that was most convenient for them. So again, really important that we protect and we support our election workers. We hope that we'll have all of your support in doing the same, but that's a huge issue right now, just as I'm sure you all are aware. I hear from our local boards a lot and our election directors about just being concerned with just the general sentiment and trying to get people to come and do that important work. So just wanted to close with a few words about elections. I'll close with two that we've talked a lot about money issues, and they are important. When we don't get our road money, we still fill the potholes, right? We're still going to do that. It's just now we're going to have to figure out a way to make that work with very few options to actually raise real revenue. So I'll turn it back to President Keegan-Air to close this out, and then we're happy to take any questions.
Just want to thank you for having us again today. I actually happen to sit as the council liaison to the Board of Elections. I have been doing this for 12 years, so I can possibly answer some questions about school construction issues. Delegate Kerr and Delegate Fair, possibly Delegate Siliberte, know that I got my start being a PTA mom and fighting for school construction money. So don't say you can't go on and do great things as a PTA mom. But we appreciate your time this afternoon, and we will just take any questions now.
Thank you so much. Oh, Delegate Siliberte.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kevin, you had mentioned, I believe, funding for 911. Do you have that amount, perhaps?
I'm sorry, the amount?
Sir?
I'm sorry, the
911 funding?
Yes, sir.
What amount are we talking about there?
So there, in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act, there's just a provision that says 911 funds may now be used to fund operations at the Maryland Department. There's no dollar amount, so it could be ostensibly any amount, but hopefully that provision is stricken. But yes, we have raised the fee over the years. Maryland for a long time made it so if you had a family plan, you only paid $1. And we know now everybody has family plans with multiple lines. And so a few years ago, Maryland went to everybody pays per line. That got us back to where we need to be in terms of investing in the infrastructure. But we are worried that with a provision like that, that could turn us upside down overnight. So thank you for the question. And I can follow up with the total amounts in the fund if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Delegate Terraza.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you guys for the presentation. I really appreciate it. As somebody who spent 11 years on the MACA board, I want to get back to housing and land use, even though we don't do those here necessarily, but it seems like there's been a trend over the last at least 5 years or so to really shift that from local control over land use and housing to state control. I know you're working well with the administration, but do you share that observation and/or concern? And when you say you might be working stuff about vesting out, would that be to leave it with the counties, or will that leave vesting in the hands of the state?
So thank you. So the first one I'll take, yes, I share your sentiment. I think generally it's fair to say counties are concerned about those shifts, and every year we see more and more bills to do that. Obviously, sitting where we sit, we feel like we're in the best position to respond to issues locally. Again, we understand we're not perfect. We understand that sometimes the state does need to step in. But generally, we're the most accessible. I think when someone has a problem, they're not going to run to Annapolis. They're going to run to their local government, as you well know. So yes, it's concerning, but I think we're trying to work hand in hand and maybe in some instances show that maybe you don't want to control local zoning. Maybe that's not something you want to get into. And there are a lot of nuances on the ground, as I think you heard earlier. So yes, it's concerning, but I think, again, we're trying to work hand in hand and make sure that, we're explaining to people exactly how things work on the ground. And when it comes to housing, I think we are working, we're working well. Last year, there was some public stuff that really blew up on the housing stuff. We've been working well. We're not all the way there on all the issues. I think with the developers, just on vesting, I think we've kind of found a sweet spot where, not necessarily having a defined timeline like 10 years or whatever, but I think we could all agree that it's not fair to change the rules after somebody comes in and they pay their money, they get a permit, whatever. That's probably, everybody should probably abide by that. But obviously sometimes you do need to shift. And so I think with the developers, we've gotten some language that we're still going back and forth, but that they're comfortable and that we're comfortable on that piece. That said, there are still other issues, I think, I think 3 bills the governor is introducing on housing that we're working through. But our relationship, I should say, is better than it was last year.
So if I can jump in, please. So yes, we are working very hard, both with folks from the Secretary's office as well as the Governor's office, as well as the Builders Association. Investing is one of the issues that is still, we're negotiating still. Right now, vesting is, court law was established that, and it had to be footers in the ground. And Maryland is a late vesting state. And the builders would like to see it moved up so that they're vested earlier in the process. And so this is all being negotiated, and once we reach some kind of a compromise, it then has to go back out to all of our 23 counties and the city of Baltimore to make sure they're all in agreement with what we seem to have reached agreement on. And so, but we're all talking again, which was not really the case at the end of last session. So we're encouraged by that, and we're going to keep plugging away because we're all about partnerships. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that you're working together. I just think, like, sort of having done local government, we have a better sense of what having your permits might mean, that might not be a project happening this year, but could be 10 years, 20 years down the line, and how long are those permits. So I appreciate how you're working with the administration, and but I also appreciate where you're coming from.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I think that's our last question for the day. I want to just thank you all for being here, President Keegan-Ayer, Mr. Canali, and Ms. Anderson. Just also wanted to reiterate that you all know, I think the speakers made no secret of it, that a big part of our focus this year is around affordability, accountability, and opportunity. And so I think that there's clearly a big aspect of that is how government operations work, and learning more and more that obviously there's what happens at the state level, but also the importance of how our governance structures are working at the local level. And so I know that we all have a lot of shared goals around growing revenue, making sure that our young people are getting access to the vital education. That way they have a prosperous future, which means more prospect for them to be a part of our revenue generation. And also we know how important infrastructure is to businesses and to people getting where they have to go. So really, truly want to thank you all for your leadership and really continued partnership on these issues, both those that come directly to this committee, but the broader issues of the different subsects of governance. So thank you so much for all that you're doing, and looking forward to seeing you, or whoever, I think it'll be you, Ms. Anderson, before the committee likely during the session. So thank you all very much. With that, that adjourns our briefing for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.